This looks like my old computer, but it's not. It's actually an exact clone of it, though. It's another computer that we used to have at the TV station. We quit using it because it developed a problem where it would shut off after a few minutes. Now, we made the initial assumption that it was a power supply going bad. However, since we weren't using it anymore, I'm preparing it to actually sell. So I've stripped all the old extra, professional SDI I/O cards and serial cards and stuff out of it. And I pulled the video card out of it, which is this. And what I found was that the video card, the fan was seized. And when I tried to figure out how to oil the fan, I couldn't figure out how. And then the rotor of the fan basically just fell right off, revealing a ton of rust inside. And the parts inside this computer do have a tiny amount of rust on them, so moisture just must have attacked them. Here's the screws that held the fan to the video card, quite rusty indeed. So that'll be fun. I clipped the wires off the original fan. Someday I'll see what fans I have that might fit this, wire it up, and it'll be fun to see if some random fan will wire up and work, and if this video card still works. For the time being, I've put in a video card that's just I've had lying around in a box. It's a Radeon HD 5670. So about the same age as the original card, which was a Radeon HD 4870. 1 GB card. The motherboard in this is actually, it's very similar to my old motherboard, but it's actually a different model. Mine, the one I have, which I still keep as a spare, is an Asus P6T. This is an Asus P6T WS Pro. And the only difference I can find right off the bat is that while the P6T has a floppy disk controller, this version does not have a floppy disk controller. This one also has what appears to be, I think these are called PCI X slots, but I don't think the normal P6T has those slots. So this is sort of a beefier, sort of more workstation oriented. They're both workstation boards, but this is, even more workstation oriented. Strips out some of the legacy stuff like the floppy disk controller and adds some workstation grade stuff like those big slots. So anyway, I put a 120 gig SSD and a 500 gig mechanical hard drive in there. It's got a DVD-RW drive already in it. The power supply is a Sparkle Power Green 600, which visually appears to be simply a smaller version of my Sparkle Power Magna 1200, which was in my old computer before I replaced it with a Seasonic power supply, just because it's getting old, although I'm using it now in a different computer. It's got 4 gigs of RAM installed, DDR3 RAM. If everything checks out fine on this, I'll upgrade it to 12 gigs when I sell it. It's got 6 slots, so it's a triple channel system. So yeah, just got the video card. CPU fan and case fans are fine. It's got an i5 in it, unlike my old one, which had an i7 before I switched it out for a Xeon. Maybe I'll stick the i7 in here, sweeten the pot a little bit for when we sell it. Not sure. But yeah, in case it is actually the power supply going bad that caused this thing to shut down after a few minutes. Boy, I hope it doesn't do anything that scares me when I plug it in and power it on. But let's find out. Fire in the hole. There's something installed on that SSD from another computer. I think it might be Windows. No, it wouldn't have been Windows Vista. Maybe, no, it might be Windows 10 on it. Not that it matters, I'll be reinstalling it anyway. Monitor has not come to life. I've actually never tested that card. That card might be, it could very well be bad. I'll switch it out for this. Old Faithful, my Radeon HD 5870, the first good GPU I ever had, and the first GPU I had, the one that originally came with what is effectively now my current computer. So throw this guy in, see how it looks. Does it have VGA on it? It does not. I'm gonna have to scrounge up an adapter. I hope I have one. Let's give that a shot. Ah, there we go. It's got the LAN boot ROM enabled. Okay. Well, there we go. So that video card might be bad then. Well, I don't mind selling this thing with that card. It served me well, but I have 2 other newer cards as spares now, so it can go. Sweeten the pot a bit more. Looks like the clock battery might be dead, so I'll have to check that. Also, it's not seeing my mechanical hard drive for some reason, which is interesting, so I'll have to check that as well. Oh, this has an i7 950 on it, just like mine. Okay, it's got an i5 sticker on it, which means I should probably, well, no, forget it, I'll leave it. I'll just say on the listing it's got an i7. Seeing the 4 gigs of RAM, 2010 BIOS date, and yeah, it's similar to my P6T. Temperatures look okay. Alright, I guess I'll find out why the mechanical hard drive's not showing up. Maybe oh, well, maybe it's because the cord fell out of it while I was putting in the video card. That would cause it. Well, it actually did boot up to what was on that SSD before, which was apparently Ubuntu Mate. And yeah, funny enough, it's working just fine. It sees the 500 gig mechanical hard drive too, so cool. Well, this thing's licensed for Windows 10, so I'll put Windows 10 on it and give it a rundown, shakedown test, and make sure there aren't any actual further problems with this thing. So I'm just noticing now this video card is missing a capacitor. And you know what? I remember 2-3 years ago when I got this card, I distinctly remember removing that capacitor for some reason, and I have no idea why. I don't know if I harvested it for something else because I was short on capacitors. I haven't the foggiest clue, but let me see if I can find another picture of this card online so I can see what value is supposed to go there. And I'll just solder one on and see if it works. Well, unfortunately, there are many versions of this one card, but by the looks of it, that capacitor was probably 270 microfarad at 16 volts. So I think I have one of those. I'll stick it on there and we'll see if this card comes back to life. One of these things is not like the others. But we'll see if it works. Just waiting for Windows to finish updating here so we can shut down. Computer's working just fine, by the way. I would say the shutting off issue, which we attributed to a bad power supply, actually was just this GPU overheating with that seized fan. So that's nice to see. See if this changes anything. I am going to call that a no. So I'm going to pronounce this video card dead. And what I'm wondering, I wonder if I can transfer this cooler onto this heatsink on this card. It just occurred to me to check. The heatsink off the dead card has multiple bolt patterns on it. It might just drop right into this card, and then I won't have to redneck this fan onto it. It'll just snap right on like it always did. I'm curious to see if it works. Look at that. I love when a redneck repair comes together. I also love that two different graphics card manufacturers agreed on a bolt pattern. Then again, perhaps that's determined by ATI and not the card manufacturer. Well, I'd say let's put this in here and see if this works and see if it works long term. Only upset is the power color fan is only a 2-wire fan, whereas the original fan to this Asus card was 3-wire, so I've just omitted the yellow wire. And I'm assuming slash hoping that means the fan will just run full speed rather than not run at all. I just realized this card has only DVI outputs on it, and I could have swore I had a DVI to VGA cable or adapter, but if I ever did, I can't find it. So I've just run a long DVI cable into my main monitor over there. So let's see how this redneck fix works. Is the fan running? Yes, it is. Running, moving plenty of air. And we have a signal to the monitor. So the card is still working. Excellent. Oh dear. What in the world? Well then, if you ever wondered what Windows 10 looked like in what appears to be 640 by 480 with 16 shades of gray, here you go. Maybe, hopefully, it's just because it needs to reinstall the driver. Can we even do such a thing at this resolution? So, I was having an issue where the card would only function during post, and then the monitor would just go to sleep. So I actually repasted it. I put new thermal paste on there. It didn't change anything, but then all of a sudden it decided to start working. So, I don't know. I should have booted into a Linux CD or something. Oh, maybe I should go into Device Manager. I can't believe this is actually usable right now. Like, what on earth? What video mode are we running in? Like, how is this even a valid mode? It's in black and white. Advanced display settings. 640 by 480. I guess 256 shades of gray? But holy smokes. I mean, I've never seen it do black and white like this. Unless it's the card severely malfunctioning. Okay, where did the update program? Oh yeah, I was going to go into Device Manager. Display adapters. Oh, it sees the card. I have a feeling that maybe this card is no good. You know, I just have a hunch. See what it does when I restart. That's looking a little more promising. That looks better. Okay. Oh, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned, the speed of the fan on the GPU is actually varying, so it must be a 2-wire speed control like the old fan. The third wire just must be for RPM or something. Although so far... Ouch! Oh my god, that's a lot of damage. Boy, I gotta wash my hands. That's a lot of damage! Wow, I really like to cut pieces off my fingers. I was gonna say it does nothing but run the fans full speed so far. Okay, let me repair this. Well, after that little mishap, the card seems to be working now. It seemed a bit questionable before, but it doesn't matter. I only put it in this computer to test it. Just curious to see if it works. This video sort of turned into a hodgepodge of getting some obsolete but not vintage, neglected computer hardware to work. I'm gonna put the old what is this, 5870 back in, and that's what I'll sell the computer with. But I'll keep this guy around, get away from there. I'll keep that card around, and maybe put it in another computer someday. I kind of like it. It's kind of badass now because of that redneck little fix there. An Asus branded card with a Power Color branded cooler on it. I like it. It's a couple days later. I've been using this computer on and off, and it seems to be running just fine, which is great. I decided to repaste the old GPU here. Of course, 12, 13-year-old GPU, sure enough, the thermal paste was turned to clay, pretty much, so I repasted it, just help, you know, this card, these cards, especially of this age, but these high-end, you know, gaming class cards of the time, and even of today for that matter, they just push out so much heat. So I repasted this, just give it the best chance of keeping itself cool. I also decided to repaste the CPU for the same reason. Over a decade, thermal paste that was on there was hard and flaky, so I repasted it. And it's funny, you know, these Intel coolers, they are okay, they're not bad, but boy, I am not a fan of how they mount to the motherboard with those basically plastic catches that you push in, and then you gotta turn them to lock them in, and oh boy, I don't like that. They seem okay until you have to remove the cooler, and then it feels like the most fragile, unreliable thing in the world. But you know, I took this cooler off, I repasted the CPU, and when I put everything back together, I ran Prime 95 just to see how it was holding, and when Prime 95 started, the CPU temperature immediately shot up to 85 degrees Celsius, and the CPU immediately began throttling itself. It dropped from the 3 gigahertz stock speed to about 2 gigahertz under full load. And I felt the cooler, and the cooler, or the heatsink rather, it was still cold. So I was like, well, clearly there's some bad thermal transfer going on. So I shut it down, I pulled the cooler. Sure enough, the thermal paste I applied had only spread a tiny bit, because I think the cooler's, just by the limitations of its design, is not making the tightest contact with the CPU. So I used quite a bit more thermal paste just to make up the gaps, and it's working much better now. I've got Prime 95 running. CPU, once again, is getting close to 85. You know, it's a relatively small cooler. However, not only is it holding its stock speed, it's actually turboing a little bit. We're holding at 3.2 gigahertz, so I'm happy with that. I think that is working as designed. And yeah, everything is working very well. And I've installed Avast Antivirus. I installed LibreOffice. I've really come to like LibreOffice. I don't know why anybody would pay for Microsoft Office. And something else I did was I ran Passmark Performance Test. So here's the score. And you know, it's about what I expected. Reasonable enough. But let's remember what these graphics scores are, because at work today I remembered yet another GPU that we've had floating around because it was in another computer we had that bit the dust. And it's this. It is an Asus Flavor GTX 1050 sort of a mid-tier model of the GTX 1000 series. This card's quite a bit newer. It's from about 2016. And which is odd because the computer we pulled this out of was made in 2009 or 2010, so obviously it was upgraded at some point. But yeah, this was in a Dell workstation we had. Suffered a motherboard failure one day of last year, I think, and we just saved the parts from it, including this. So as much as I hate to have to go through with uninstalling the AMD Catalyst Control Center and completely switch from an AMD to an NVIDIA card and all the trauma to Windows that comes with that, I'm very curious to see now how a sort of mid-range-ish but still pretty good card from 2016 stacks up against a very high-end gaming class card from 2000. I think this came out in like 2008, 2009. It's a pretty old card. So let's see how they stack up. Does this card still hold its own against a GTX 750 or GTX 1050 rather, or will the 1050 beat it? Let's find out. Oh, I forgot to mention, I also upgraded the RAM. There is 8 gigabytes in this now. I decided to use as many of my 1 gigabyte DDR3 modules that I had lying around as I could, just because I just wanted to get rid of them. I actually could have slid in one more. I mean, there's a mix of 1 and 2 gigabyte modules. I could have slid another 1 gigabyte module in there, made it 9 gigabytes, but it's such a weird amount of RAM, 9 gigabytes. I was afraid that people would think me kind of sus if I did that, so I figured I'd just leave it at 8 gigabytes, familiar amount. GTX 1050 is installed, running, driver installed. Let's run Passmark performance test, and very interested to see how it compares to a much older but much more powerful for the time card. So let's find out. Holy crap, it's more than double. Damn, not only is it more than double, it actually almost matches my GTX 770, which I do still have, by the way. Very generous gift from a viewer in Australia. It's a spare these days, but I still got it. But this thing almost matches it. Wow, I was not expecting that extreme of an improvement. I thought maybe it would match or be a little bit better than this card. Nope, 6-7 years of improvement really does make its mark, even though that this is only a mid-range card. Wow. Well then, I might as well leave this card in here. Not only is it way more powerful, and it's newer, so better compatibility with Windows 10, and if they change out the motherboard someday to something that can run Windows 11, this card will probably work fine on Windows 11 as well. Not only that, but just the name, more recognizable. A computer with a GTX 1050 sounds a lot better than a computer with a Radeon HD 5870. People generally, I think people by now generally know that the Radeon HD series of cards are old cards, and of course this one is so old it's branded ATI instead of AMD. But that's okay, you know what? I'm alright. I like this card. I'm glad I can keep it a little longer, even if it's only a spare these days. It's a sick looking card. It's just this massive brick of obsolete computing power. I love it. This card's obviously way more efficient on power as well. You'll notice it doesn't need any of these 6-pin power connectors, and I'm sure it'll be easier work on this pretty elderly power supply. So yeah, GTX 1050 will stay. It'll help sell the computer, and this thing is pretty much ready to go. I'll just, you know, tidy it up, make sure all my fooling around with different cards hasn't made Windows do anything funky, and then we'll put this thing on Facebook Marketplace. Now, some of you may think I'm crazy. This computer is 13 years old. Why on earth would you even attempt to sell something like this rather than just give it away? Well, the thing is, yes, this computer is 13 years old, but it was an extremely, like, top of the top for the time. The Intel X58 platform still slaps hard today. I would still be happily using my Asus P6T board had I not just happened to get my X99 Deluxe 2 board. No, these things still go hard over a decade later. Really, really powerful. A laptop from this era, almost certainly e-waste. A lower end desktop of the time, again, something you would only give away. But a system like this, not only in its current configuration, really goes hard. Like you can probably do some light gaming on this perfectly fine. Maybe even some mid-end gaming. I'm not sure. I'm not a gamer. I don't know what games are like these days. But there's a lot of computing power inside this box, and there's a lot of upgrade potential. Remember that I upgraded my CPU to a 6-core Xeon that I was able to overclock to 4 gigahertz despite it only being a 2.6 gigahertz CPU. That actually amazed even the person who gave me the CPU. But yeah, 6-core Xeon, you can upgrade these boards to. They'll take 24 gigs of RAM. You can probably put like an RTX card in this and it'll probably work just fine. You'd have to get a better power supply than 600 watts probably, but yeah, these are really powerful systems on their own. But lots and lots of upgrade potential. And I truly think this computer is going to be worth the price that I'm going to try and sell it for. And I think whoever buys it will be very happy. It's a cool system filled with really cool hardware. So there you go. There's been a look at playing with some obsolete computer hardware and some, well, kind of obsolete cards. This one I wouldn't consider obsolete. I think it's still a very capable card in the modern world, just going by these scores. But yeah, revived an old neglected workstation that we retired because we thought it was having power supply issues. Tested some obsolete graphics cards and that graphics card as well. And had some fun tonight. So thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Really glad to break out a computer for a new video. I know it's been a long time. Computers were always my thing. And then I branched off into a lot of other things. But it feels really good to get my hands inside a computer. Even if it ends up biting me once in a while. But there you go. And we're not stopping the ball rolling there. Take a look at what I've got for next time. I've had this sitting in a box for a couple of years. It is a socket A board. It's a VIA KT400 base board, which is extremely nostalgic to me because the first new computer I ever had, Christmas 2004, was a custom-built computer with a VIA KM400 based motherboard. And the second custom-built computer that replaced that one was also a KM400 base system. This is a KT400, which is even better because it means it doesn't have onboard graphics. We have our choice of AGP or PCI graphics card. I've had this motherboard in a box for 2 years. I've never bothered to test it because I've never had a case that can take a full-size ATX motherboard. I do now. So next time, we are going to see if this motherboard works. I really hope it does. And I hope you will join me for that next time. Bye for now. I don't have food for you. This isn't food. I mean, I can show you if you want. No? You don't want my alcohol and painter's tape?